Howdy, shindiggers. My name is Steve Holroyd. By my side is Sydney the Wonder Chug. And welcome to Only the Ball Was Brown, the second best way to spend 15 minutes of your day. Today, the NBA celebrates its 75th anniversary, marking its debut in 1946 as the Basketball Association of America. For some folks, this anniversary is not quite accurate, as the NBA itself was formed when the BAA merged with the National Basketball League in 1949. Thus, some folks think the NBA either didn't start until 1949 or should start including the beginning of the NBL in 1937 when celebrating anniversaries. Interesting points, but not why we're here today. Instead, we're going to talk about a league that would be celebrating its 100th anniversary in 4 years, had it managed to survive. Today, you are going to meet pro basketball's first attempt at a major national league, the American Basketball League. The ABL was formed in 1925 when wealthy businessmen George Preston Marshall, a laundry magnate, and Max Rosenblum, a department store tycoon, teamed with Chicago Bears owner George Halas to create a pro basketball league that would be strictly major league and national. Bear in mind, pro basketball was nothing new at that point. Since 1898, there had been professional basketball, starting with the first of many leagues named National Basketball League. Despite the name, however, this league and others like it were all quite regional. The first NBL, for instance, was primarily made up of teams from Philadelphia and Trenton and Camden, New Jersey, a two-state national league. Marshall, Rosenblum, and Halas had bigger plans. A league run with strict guidelines under a strong, well-managed office, which would closely monitor operations under a commissioner system similar to professional baseball. In keeping with the major part, only cities of substantial population would be admitted to the league, and all teams would play in first-class facilities. Now, you may wonder, why now? Well, the 1920s was a boom time for professional team sports. Up until then, baseball was the only major professional team sport, with others confined to colleges or various semi-pro leagues. The 1920s saw a number of sports deciding to go major with professionalism, like baseball. 1920 saw the formation of the National Football League. 1921 saw the arrival of the American Soccer League. Hockey being huge in Canada already, the sport had been professional for a number of years. In 1924, however, the league moved into the United States for the first time and then added about 4 other teams in 1925 and 1926. All of these leagues and expansion met with considerable success. With college basketball already very popular, the time seemed right to bring that sport into the major professional ranks. So Messrs. Marshall, Rosenblum, and Halas put their plans to fruition, and a 9-team league began in 1925. The original franchises included 6 cities that had Major League Baseball teams: Boston, Brooklyn, Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, and Washington. Buffalo and Rochester were of sufficient size to still justify major. Only Fort Wayne was an outlier, but Indiana was already a basketball hotbed by that time, so it did not do too much damage to the major league look. And it was not just the cities that were major. Most of the teams were already well-established, powerful clubs. For instance, the 3 founders of the league brought teams with them: Rosenblum's imaginatively titled Cleveland Rosenblums, Halas's Chicago Bruins, with the obvious allusion to his football team, and Marshall's Washington Palace 5. 2 notable omissions among already established nationally known teams: the original Celtics of New York, probably the most famous professional team in the country at that time, and the Philadelphia SPHA, SPHA, which stood for South Philadelphia Hebrews Association, also a popular touring team. And, of course, no invitations were extended to the great touring black teams of the era, like the New York Wrens or Philadelphia Commanders. Actually, not so much. For what little it is worth, these exclusions, and the exclusion of the black players generally, do not seem to have been by design, as in professional baseball. In fact, time would show that all these teams in the ABL and the Celtics and the SPHAs were happy to play black teams, as opposed to Major League Baseball teams who would not play Negro League teams. For what little it is worth, it does seem that as with the Celtics and Spas, it's quite likely that any invitation to these black touring teams would have been declined anyway, as most of the popular touring teams made a lot of money on their own, so they may have just passed on the chance. Now, even with the absence of the country's most popular touring teams, the ABL fielded a strong lineup in its first season. Most of the ABL's players in that first year were either veterans of the regional pro leagues in the East or were Midwest semi-pros. Few had college experience. Top salaries were about $1,500 a month, which is $23,000 or so in today's money. Not too shabby. The ABL also made one significant rule change. Up until its arrival, college and AAU rules called for a one-handed dribble, while professional rules still required a two-handed dribble. The ABL changed that and adopted the AAU rules in their entirety. All courts also had to have backboards, and the chicken wire that surrounded many a court to protect spectators from the mayhem on the floor, referred to as cages, which is why ballers are still called cagers today, by the way, were removed. But mayhem it was. Basketball in the 1920s, especially pro basketball, bore little resemblance to the sport we know today. It was a sport played on the ground, with strong burly men running hard screens and using lateral ball movement, almost like single-wing football, en route to the perfect shot. The shot clock had not yet been conceded, so possession was a premium. Made even more so by a center jump after each basket. Imagine a game of make it, take it, almost. With a dominant center, one team could find itself in possession of the ball for much of the game. Not surprisingly, a number of football players would spend winters playing basketball. Indeed, Hollis's Bruins would include a number of Bears. Elbows flew liberally, blind screens would jar opponents' teeth. It was, make no mistake, a game for men. As Major League Baseball remained by far the model for professional sports success, the ABL tried to imitate it as much as it could and adopted a split-season schedule, so that the winners of each half could then face off in a basketball World Series. Starting in November 1925, the ABL was largely a success as far as getting its product on the floor. As opposed to the pro leagues that preceded it, games were not canceled at the last minute, and players did not hop from team to team on their own, as opposed to via trades, due to the use of exclusive contracts. Crowds were respectable. No team got rich, but the future looked promising. Only one team that had started the season failed to finish it, Boston. Second half winners Cleveland defeated first half winners Brooklyn to win the first ABL title, with more than 10,000 fans attending the two games in Cleveland. Rusty Saunders, playing with both Brooklyn and Washington, led the league in scoring with 238 total points, an average of 7 per game. Washington's Ray Kennedy led the points per game category with 8. Yes, with Cleveland completing its three-game sweep in the finals by a 23-22 result in the third game, you get a sense of how low-scoring the era was. The 1926-27 season started with everyone but Buffalo returning. The league added the Spas, now going by Warriors, and Baltimore to bring its total number of clubs back up to 9. The sport's greatest drawing card, still the original Celtics, originally committed to joining the league and then demurred. This time, however, the ABL decided to hit back, decreeing that member clubs would no longer play Celtics in exhibitions. The year before, the Celtics had made a lot of money playing ABL teams, who, along with some black teams like the Wrens, now represented the best professional teams in the country and often beat them. The ABL ban left them scheduling a lot of also-rans, and interest in Celtics games plummeted. The ABL's second season got off to a solid start, except after opening with an 0-5 record, 1926 runners-up Brooklyn Acadians dropped out of the league. Not having a team in the ever-important New York market would have been a fatal blow for the young circuit. As fate would have it, however, the Celtics were tired of losing money on the road. As a result, the ABL got what it long desired. The original Celtics joined the league, replacing the Brooklyn franchise. Alas, the league would soon learn that the adage, "be careful what you wish for," exists for a reason. Once in the league, the Celtics overwhelmed the competition. Inheriting the Acadians' 0-5 start was too much to allow them to challenge for the first half crown, but the team steamrolled everyone to go 19-2 in the second half, sweeping Cleveland 3-0 to win the ABL playoffs. For its third season, the ABL scrapped the two-half system, instead having two division winners face off against one another in the finals. In 1927-28, the now New York Celtics again obliterated the rest of the league, going 40-9 to win the Eastern Division, and again winning the finals. This dominance was not appreciated by fans, who stayed away in droves, and the cry "break up the Celtics" was heard in arenas throughout the league. the ABL style of play also did not attract fans. Marked by roughness and frequent fouling, pro hoops quickly gained a wrestling image. The league instituted a foul-out rule, but it wasn't enough to keep fans from returning to the more open and cleaner college game. The league lost 2 teams during the season, including founding owner Marshall's Washington team. Just 3 years in, things looked bleak for the ABL. Having worked so hard to get the Celtics in the league, the ABL then took the extraordinary step of throwing them out before the 1928-29 season, dispersing their stars throughout the league. The Philadelphia Warriors also dropped out. New York remaining an essential market, the ABL added the New York Cocoas, an all-Jewish team run by ex-Celtic stars Davy Banks and Nat Holman, and 2 teams from a local minor league. Breaking up the Celtics did not really have the desired effect when it turned out that Cleveland picked up most of their best players. With the ABL reverting to its 2-half format, the Rosenblums won the first half and then went on to win the finals. Having survived Season 4 and with fans slowly returning to ABL arenas, it appeared that the young league may have turned the corner. On October 29, 1929, however, the stock market crash ushered in the Great Depression, although no one knew it yet. Most of the ABL owners assumed this was a temporary setback. After all, there had been market dips before and proceeded with the 1929-30 season. The New York Celtics returned, with most of their original players regrouping. Age and rust had set in, however, and the team stumbled to a 5-5 start before folding. Cleveland again won the first half and the playoffs. While the stock market crash did not have an immediate effect on the league, as the season progressed, what was thought to be just a minor economic blip was becoming a full-blown panic. Thus, as the 1930-31 season opened for the ABL, it was on a somber note. The Great Depression was in full swing. ABL attendances plummeted, while teams still had swollen payrolls to meet. Incredibly, the league did not think that the Depression was to blame. Rather, it was thought fans were tired of seeing the same old players. As a result, it ordered all teams to sign at least 2 new players, ideally from the college ranks or local leagues. To make room, teams were happy to cut their highest-paid players, who, not coincidentally, were often the most popular players in the league. Not surprisingly, this ruse had little effect on the gate and even managed to chase some fans away. The fact that the league was doomed was made clear when Max Rosenblum, from the start the ABL's biggest supporter, pulled his Cleveland team, 3-time champions and in 4 of the league's 5 finals, out of the league in the first half. Nevertheless, the league limped to the finish line with the Brooklyn Visitations beating Fort Wayne in the finals. The end of the season revealed a sea of red ink. The ABL knew it could not lick the Great Depression any more than the rest of the country could. It folded after 6 years. But why did it not survive when Major League Baseball, the NFL, and the NHL had? In hindsight, the Great Depression was just the final blow to a league that was never all that healthy from an economic standpoint. Players were paid too much too soon in the haste to look major league. Philadelphia, for instance, lost $60,000 in its 2 years in the league, about $1 million in today's money, despite being among the ABL's best teams. Recall that there was not yet revenue streams as TV, radio, or merchandising money. Teams lived and died at the gate, and between Celtic domination, a distaste for the roughhousing of the pro game, and ultimately a lack of disposable income brought by the Depression, the large gates seen during the first ABL finals of 10,000 plus were never repeated. Still, the original ABL was not a total failure. It spawned a second, but much more regional ABL, which would remain the strongest professional East Coast league until 1946. It also helped prompt the beginnings of the Midwest Professional National Basketball League in 1937, which would become the country's best pro league, even after the arrival of the Basketball Association of America in 1946. Well, we covered a lot of ground, but we're out of time. If you like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. You can also follow us on Twitter at InTheLowPost and on Facebook and Instagram at Only the Ball Was Brown. I also forgot to mention last week, we have a YouTube page, also Only the Ball Was Brown, which includes some footage from the 1929-30 ABL season, the link for which is in the program notes, so check that out too. So until next week, this is Steve Holroyd and Sydney the Wonder Chug saying thanks for listening and hope you check in next week. See ya.